Right now, elite software engineers are actively sabotaging corporate systems through a desperate survival tactic called tokenmaxxing, which is artificially burning billions in AI compute just to tick algorithmic performance reviews. And Jensen Huang loves it. While Silicon Valley VCs pump multi-trillion-dollar valuations based on a utopian lie, this manufactured illusion of productivity is hiding a structurally compromised cash furnace. Tech giants are mass-firing human workers to fund exorbitant data center leases that generate pure noise. We're piloting a highly leveraged zeppelin straight into a volcano, funding an infrastructure so fundamentally broken that Google's flagship AI routinely assures users that cockroaches can safely live inside their penises. To understand the impending market crash, we must dissect the tokenmaxxing myth from the inside out, starting with the absolute foundational myth keeping the 2026 AI boom afloat. It is the fact they want you to believe that widespread corporate adoption is being driven by unparalleled organic efficiency gains for the individual worker. But the actual data proves that adoption is frequently being driven by a deeply entrenched culture of fear. This has led to a behavioral and operational distortion that insiders are calling tokenmaxxing. Sounds like a joke, right? But I assure you, the financial damage is incredibly real. Tokenmaxxing is a rapidly proliferating workplace phenomenon where software engineers and corporate employees artificially inflate their consumption of AI compute resources just to survive algorithmic performance reviews. Read that again. They aren't using the tools to work better. They're using the tools to avoid getting fired. Large tech firms are increasingly integrating AI usage into their key performance indicators, their KPIs. They took a novel tool and turned it into a mandatory metric of employee value. So, what do employees do? They adapt, but they don't adapt to optimize business outcomes. They adapt to optimize the metrics by which they're being surveilled. Look at companies like Meta, Microsoft, and Salesforce. Executive leadership at these places has introduced internal leaderboards and tracking mechanisms that literally mandate the use of AI coding tools. Meta has an internal gamification system that employees ominously refer to as Claudonomics. This tracks the exact volume of AI token usage to rank developers against one another. It explicitly equates the volume of AI compute you consume with your human productivity and your future job security. This creates a direct, unattainable incentive for metric hacking. It is a modern, digitized manifestation of the Hawthorne effect. When people know they are being observed and judged by highly specific, quantizable metrics, they will alter their behavior to maximize that metric. They will do this entirely regardless of its actual utility, and entirely regardless of the collateral damage it causes to the broader system. To survive these leaderboards, to avoid the looming threat of AI-justified layoffs, engineers are forcing LLMs to perform low-value, high-redundant tasks, such as running multiple AI agents in tandem. They input artificially long, complex prompts, and they deliberately automate system workflows that they could have executed manually in a fraction of the time. And the goal is no longer to write clean, efficient code. The goal is to look as AI native as humanly possible to the management dashboards. And industry leaders are cheering this on. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang has publicly championed this exact shift. He argues that organizations must stop measuring human hours and instead focusing on maximizing compute as a multiplier. He calls it the second shit advantage. I meant to say second ship advantage. Huang literally argues that elite workers aren't constrained by fatigue anymore, they're just constrained by access to raw digital workers. He's pushing for a 100-to-1 ratio of digital agents to humans. But when you operationalize that philosophy through strict corporate KPIs, you don't get 100 times the output, you get the illusion of massive, highly successful internal adoption. If you're an executive or VC looking at a high-level dashboard, you see productivity skyrocketing because token consumption graphs are trending exponentially upward. In reality, your company is paying a premium for API rates for pure digital noise. You're funding the very tools that are quietly eroding your operational margins and corrupting your code base. And the financial, structural, and operational consequences of tokenmaxxing are devastating. The core assumption of the AI boom is that higher AI utilization inherently leads to higher quality and faster outputs. But that assumption has been systematically debunked by comprehensive, data-driven academic and industry research over the past 2 years. Let's look at the landmark study led by Yegor Denisov-Blanche at Stanford University's Software Engineering Productivity Research Group. They evaluated the workflows of 100,000 enterprise developers. What they found was a severe, undeniable productivity paradox. The study identified 3 major methodological flaws in all the previous pro-AI research. Relying on commits and pull requests as a proxy for actual productivity, over-relying on unrealistic greenfield, meaning from-scratch lab tests, and relying on highly subjective developer surveys. When Denisov-Blanche's team actually implemented a model to evaluate source code changes based on actual quality, maintainability, and long-term viability, the truth came out. AI consumption routinely fails to equal successful delivery. The research found that using AI often introduces incredibly complex, subtle logic errors. This forces human developers into a vicious cycle of spinning their own wheels. They have to generate new tasks specifically to fix the bugs created by the AI itself. The developer goes from being the internal author of software to a forensic debugger. They spend exponentially more hours unraveling the hallucinations of the LLM than they would have spent just writing the damn code manually in the first place. And this quality collapse is heavily corroborated by GitClear's DORA 2025 AI Capacities Model Report. They analyzed 211 million lines of code across enterprise repositories. The data is an absolute bloodbath. Organizations tracking high AI adoption witnessed a 9% drop in overall code quality. They saw an 800% increase in duplicate code blocks because developers are just lazily copying and pasting AI outputs to hit their quotas. They also saw a 30% rise in static analysis warnings that remained permanently elevated post-adoption. Furthermore, teams moving to high AI utilization saw a 154% increase in the average size of pull requests, and review times lengthened by 91%. The tools are generating code far faster than human organizations can safely and responsibly absorb it. But the most critical thing GitClear highlighted was what they called the signal destruction problem. Most IT departments measure code quality at the entirely wrong point in the pipeline. Do you know what that does? It completely destroys the granular signals of AI code drift. When researchers look at the local feature branches before they are squashed, they consistently find AI drift rates and error injection that are 10 times higher than what management sees on the main branch. By the time the bloated Tokenmaxxing slop is finally visible in standard executive metrics, the technical debt is already deeply embedded into the company's most critical infrastructure. The financial toll of Tokenmaxxing scales exponentially the second AI is forced into daily workflows. The most glaring and humiliating casualty of 2026 was Uber. Uber's chief technology officer revealed that the company managed to incinerate its entire 2026 AI budget by April. 4 months Uber had deployed Anthropic's Claude Code to 5,000 engineers and utilized internal leaderboards to mandate Tokenmaxxing. And they're out of tokens. The result was a cost avalanche. Monthly API costs per engineer skyrocketed to between $500 and $2,000 because the tools became required to meet quota. Uber could not turn them off without halting development entirely. Even Microsoft was forced to abruptly cancel direct Claude Code licenses for its internal experiences and devices team just before the close of their financial year to desperately slash operational expenses. This repeated failure brings to light a critical concept that Wall Street has fundamentally misunderstood: the greenfield versus brownfield illusion. Venture capitalists love talking about the SaaSpocalypse, the theory that AI will wipe out the entire software as a service industry because non-technical users can generate custom applications using natural language prompts. They call it vibe coding. These predictions are based entirely on greenfield testing environments. Greenfield development means building software from scratch in a pristine, isolated setting. CNBC reporters famously built a functioning clone of the Monday.com platform in under an hour for less than $15 using generative tools. VCs pointed to this exact demonstration as definitive proof that the traditional SaaS market was dead. But that is a complete illusion. While a basic clone looks impressive in a vacuum, the real world operates exclusively on brownfield systems. Brownfield environments are exceptionally messy, built on decades of legacy code, intricate API dependencies, strict data governance, and massive databases. Vibe coding completely chokes here. You cannot reliably maintain a mission-critical enterprise workflow by asking a manager to write a Vibe prompt to a chatbot. Platforms like Monday.com have actually shown highly resilient growth because of enterprises are just willing to gladly pay for structural maintenance, security updates, and predictable governance that a generic chatbot simply cannot replicate. When corporate executives attempt to force greenfield AI tools into highly variable physical spaces, they invariably create redundant, highly expensive double processes. Take the $100 million lawsuit filed against Yum Brands by a major Pizza Hut franchisee. The litigation centers around Dragontail, an AI kitchen and delivery platform mandated by corporate. Prior to the mandate, this franchisee hit a 90% success rate on 30-minute deliveries using human dispatch logic. Following the AI implementation, the algorithm completely failed to navigate reality. It bypassed available in-house drivers and dispatched orders to third-party DoorDash carriers 20 minutes away. Pizzas sat under heat lamps, delivery times collapsed, and a massive 9-figure lawsuit followed. Starbucks suffered a similar disaster with Nomad Go, a computer vision AI deployed to automate inventory counts. Corporate assumed an algorithm that works in a bright lab would function during a chaotic 7 a.m. rush. Instead, the AI routinely failed, unable to distinguish between a carton of whole milk and a carton of oat milk due to shifting shadows and overlapping packaging. To avoid stockouts, baristas were forced to manually verify the AI's math, counting everything by hand anyway. Starbucks abandoned the system just after 9 months. As these failures mount, a profound shift in consumer sentiment is occurring. Generation Z, obviously myself, views AI through a lens of deep structural cynicism. To younger cohorts, AI is not a tool of empowerment. It is an engine of job displacement, mass IP theft, and environmental catastrophes. Simultaneously, this industry is substituting genuine human connection with profitable algorithmic addiction. This manifested trajectory in a high-profile lawsuit against Character AI, where a 14-year-old boy was pulled into an emotionally abusive relationship with a chatbot designed purely to maximize token usage and user retention, ultimately leading to his suicide. When tech firms prioritize engagement metrics over psychological safety, the resulting generational blowback threatens the very social license upon which the technology industry operates. The tech aristocracy is actively aware of all that, and they're aware, too, of the bubble leaking. Their strategy is to aggressively accelerate the hyper-financialization of the sector. The macro strategy in 2026 is brutally clear. Rush speculative, cash-burning AI entities to the public market via IPOs before the massive capital expenditures are fully audited by the public. Figures like Jeff Bezos continuously dismiss the systematic risks, comparing a potential crash to a healthy mechanism to eliminate the weak. But today, a massive percentage of US GDP is driven entirely by speculative AI infrastructure spending. Look at Oracle. In a ruthless pivot to compute capital, Oracle eliminated roughly 30,000 positions globally, 18% of its workforce. Long-term staff were summarily terminated via email after being ordered to document their workflows to train internal AI systems. Allison explicitly stated these layoffs were executed to free up $8 to $10 billion in annual cash flow to service corporate debt and fund a staggering $156 billion commitment to AI infrastructure and open AI contracts. Corporations are cannibalizing the middle-class salaries required to sustain the broader economy, all to build data centers for AI systems that can't reliably count milk cartons. Meanwhile, Wall Street analysts continue to assign multi-trillion-dollar valuations to firms lacking basic product viability. Google is a stark example. Google's AI overviews have repeatedly demonstrated catastrophic algorithmic flaws, interpreting user queries with such aggressive literalism that they strip away any vital human context. This results in dangerous, nonsensical advice, like explicitly suggesting users put glue on their pizzas to keep the cheese from sliding off, or the brilliant, genuinely horrifying instance where the AI overview earnestly assured a user that yes, cockroaches can live, in fact, safely inside of your penis. Worse still, by scraping and repackaging content without routing users to the original sources, the system is actively cannibalizing traffic from independent websites that provide its training data. And if you want to see the most egregious financial maneuver of 2026, look at the SpaceX IPO offering. SpaceX is aggressively rebranding itself as a pure-play AI infrastructure conglomerate, claiming a $28.5 trillion total addressable market. But a forensic analysis of their S1 prospectus reveals a terrifying, highly leveraged reality behind their $2 trillion target valuation. SpaceX is effectively using its one profitable division, Starlink Internet, to mask a catastrophic multi-billion-dollar cash furnace generated by Musk's xAI operations, which SpaceX acquired in early 2026. xAI lost a staggering $6.35 billion in 2025, with losses accelerating violently to $2.46 billion in just the first quarter of 2026. The corporate structure was actively collapsing under $37 billion in accumulated losses, so they executed a massive $20 billion bridge loan right before filing the S1 to refinance the AI losses directly onto SpaceX's corporate balance sheet. This IPO is a retail bailout mechanism for an AI venture that cannot sustain its own compute costs. Venture capitalists know foundational models are financial black holes. OpenAI burns ungodly amounts of cash in an endless brute force pursuit of scale. Conversely, Anthropic's recently leaked projections indicating an operational profit of $559 million in Q2 2026. But this sudden illusion of profitability heavily correlates with a massive, highly unusual $1.25 billion per month computing deal struck directly with SpaceX through 2029. By discounting its compute costs through intercompany vendor agreements and aggressively billing enterprise budgets via Tokenmaxxing, Anthropic managed to briefly cover its operational expenses. It is a temporary optical illusion engineered to maximize valuation ahead of their own inevitable public offering. When the software is subjected to objective auditing, it collapses. Look at the performance of Elon Musk's Grok within the United States federal government. Despite intense lobbying and near-zero pricing models, an exhaustive investigation revealed that out of more than 400 publicly identified AI use cases recorded in the 2025 inventory of the Office of Management and Budget, Grok was utilized in exactly 3. And by sinking unprecedented capital into a speculative fad, the global economy is actively cannibalizing the real economy. A comprehensive analysis by JP Morgan concluded that to achieve a standard 10% return on the capital currently deployed into AI data centers, the ecosystem must generate $650 billion in annual perpetual revenue. This is the equivalent of extracting nearly $180 per year from every global Netflix subscriber individually. Given the widespread consumer exhaustion and unreliability in physical environments and aggressive pushback from enterprise IT departments facing budgetary blowouts, generating this organic revenue is an economic impossibility. A global macroeconomic reality check is already underway, highlighted by China's recent abrupt ban on the implementation of NVIDIA's RTX 5090D V2 graphics card, forcing domestic tech firms to abandon the fragile US ecosystem. Ultimately, the entire architecture of the 2026 AI economy rests on a highly unstable foundation of manufactured demand. The skyrocketing API consumption rates touted by tech CEOs are largely an illusion, a closed loop of wasted capital driven by Tokenmaxxing, where terrified employees artificially inflate usage to hack gamified corporate surveillance systems. As the corporate finance departments across the Fortune 500 audit the wreckage of their budgets, the stark realization is finally setting in. Once the illusion of infinite efficiency shatters, capital expenditures will be violently reined in. Highly leveraged tech IPOs will face brutal public market realities, and the long overdue correction of the artificial intelligence cash furnace will inevitably begin.